January in Scotland. Not the best time to talk about t-shirts. Damn. Maybe somebody in Australia will want to know. That's a bit better. Welcome to another recycled review where I talk about 15 empties that I've got through in the last few months, and I've kind of got an idea how these bottles have changed from the first pour to the last, and I'll let you know how they've progressed throughout my time with them, give them a bit of a score and a summary before I recycle them here. Now remember, like previous recycled videos, in the description box below you're going to see a link to a spreadsheet, and in that spreadsheet it's going to have all the whiskies I've reviewed in this format, and it'll have a score next to it. It'll also have another column for when I've changed my mind. Anybody that knows and enjoys whiskey will understand exactly what that's all about. But don't just take my word for it. Also in the description box below you'll find links to other reviews out there on YouTube and beyond, so you're not just taking one man's opinion. Let's get started. Paul John Indian Whiskey. Now this is their edited expression, which is ever so slightly peated, just a hint of peat in this one. I used this recently in a blind challenge and I've enjoyed my time with this bottle in general, and the previous one I had. They've got other versions as well with various levels of peating in it. The presentation's good at 46%, and I like the story about this whiskey, not just because it's Indian whiskey of good quality, but the specific type of barley that they use in things as well. It's all very interesting. And I have to say, while this isn't Scotch, it's very good, very drinkable, very enjoyable whiskey, and it performed pretty well in our blind tasting, with a couple of the teams actually picking it out as their favourite. Now that was up against some really decent Scotches, so it shows you that this is a good whiskey. This one wasn't my favourite. I think I would go for the slightly more peated version than this. This edited version was just a little too lightly peated, to the point that you could struggle to pick up any peat sometimes at all in it. Still, this is a good whiskey. I would recommend any of the Paul Johns, and know that you're not drinking Scotch, but you're drinking a nice whiskey. I would give this one 8 out of 10, and I would have it back in the cabinet again. This has got to be one of my favourite, well, it's probably my favourite Talisker ever, but it's one of my favourite whiskies from last year. You know, this could have arguably been my whiskey of the year last year, but it was a 2018 release from Diageo, one of their special releases, so in very limited quantity and very difficult to get a hold of now, and the prices have started to climb up as the reputation of this whiskey has grown. But I've managed to get through a couple of these very, very recently, and you can see just how much I'm enjoying it. One of these I got through at the blind tasting that I was talking about earlier, and it went down very, very well. The good thing about this is that it's Talisker, but with a lot more information on the label. For instance, it tells us that it's exclusively from deep charred first fill ex-bourbon casks. It also says on the label that it was distilled in 2009 and bottled in 2018. And it's presented at 59.4%. This is great presentation from Diageo, and great confidence that they stuck it out there with a great single digit age statement on there as well. Fantastic stuff. Everybody I gave this to agreed that it was fantastic. I don't normally love Talisker. The 10-year-old doesn't always do it for me, but this is fabulous whiskey. Forget about the fact that it's Talisker, or forget about the fact that it's Scotch. Just in whiskey in general, it's brilliant, brilliant stuff. I've got another bottle inside. I would love to think that I could potentially replace that one too, because I know I'll get through it quickly. Wonderful stuff. 9 out of 10. On a good day, in the right moment, it would be at 9.5. If you can get this, pick it up at a decent price. Don't pay any more than, say, £100 for it. But if you can get it at a decent price, pick it up, and I guarantee you won't regret it. Some people get a wee bit annoyed when I talk about this whisky. Some people get a wee bit precious about this expression. They like to try and keep it under the radar, and that says a lot in itself, doesn't it? This is Ben Nevis 10-year-old. Not always available. Sometimes you can get it, sometimes you can't. Most of the production out of Ben Nevis obviously goes over to its Japanese owners in Japan. When you can get your hands on this, it's not too expensive. It's round about the £40 to £45 mark. You could consider that a wee bit pricey for a 10-year-old whisky, right up until the point until you pour a glass. It's very, very old school in style, can be characterful and a wee bit dirty at times, but it's wonderful, wonderful whisky and great presentation as well. 46% this bottle is. Honestly, I would recommend any serious whisky enthusiast has this in the cabinet. It's a great contrast whisky to pour, and it's also great for showing a good example of a more old school style of whisky profile. Fantastic stuff, Ben Nevis 10. This is a 9 out of 10 whisky. I hope you love it too. Another one of my whiskies of the year last year. Now I couldn't talk about it because again it's really limited availability. In fact, I think the number of bottles is on here, only 646 bottles. This is an 11-year-old Ledaig. This is Ledaig from the Single Malts of Scotland range, which is a whisky exchange brand, I believe. But really what we're seeing here, what I've come to understand about this range, is it's their premium stuff. For an 11-year-old Ledaig, I paid a lot for this. It was £110 a bottle, which is crazy when you think about it. But I bought it on the back of a tasting where I got to try it first, and I ended up buying 2 bottles and gifting one. I loved this so much. Very old school, very powerful, very extreme Ledaig from an Oloroso cask, but wonderfully rich stuff as well. And the reason that I've put it in a recycled review is not so that people can go out and find this. If you did find it, I would recommend that you bought it at a reasonable price, of course. I paid 110 and I considered that reasonable. Much more than that, it would start to become a bit more challenging. But the reason it's in the recycled reviews is that sometimes things are a little more expensive than you imagine they should be. And it's definitely a try before you buy scenario. But if I'd have seen this on the shelf, a Ledaig at 11 years old at £110, there is no way I'd have gambled and bought it. The best thing to do is to get yourself along to tastings, try as much as you can, share as much as you can, and discover absolutely fantastic whiskies like this that should never be judged on their age. This is amazing stuff. Again, another 9 out of 10. Glengoyne. Now, this is a different Glengoyne. This is a 14-year-old Glengoyne, so it's not part of the core official range from Glengoyne. It was actually a collaboration with a UK supermarket called Marks and Spencer's. And it's the only place that you could buy this. I don't think you can buy it anymore. I think this has been discontinued. You might still happen across a bottle here and there, but I think Marks and Spencer's are now doing a Tandu in its place. What's interesting about this is that it was exclusively from Oloroso casks at 14 years old, but presented at 40%, so right away we know that this is intended for easy, smooth drinking and to try and remove that barrier of high ABV. The expression from Glengoyne now that's closest to this, in my opinion, would probably be the standard Glengoyne 10-year-old. However, this was decent whisky. It was maybe a wee bit soft and light, and to be honest, it would be one of those whiskies that you start a flight with and it could struggle to stand up to more characterful or more powerful flavour profiles sometime down a flight. But it was very easy drinking, and for somebody that's not very sure about whisky, this was a quite pleasant, light and enjoyable experience to put in front of them and not too intimidating. I wouldn't necessarily hurry out to replace it. There's lots of other things from Glengoyne to enjoy, but if you come across this, it's decent whisky. Don't pay more than about £35-ish for it though. Not bad. 7.5 out of 10. Once upon a time, one of my favourite distilleries. Used to love things from Highland Park. Back in the days when the range was understandable and you could get your head around it and you knew what to expect. There was a 12-year-old, there was a 15-year-old, there was an 18-year-old, and there was a 21-year-old and beyond. Now, the amount of expressions that's coming out of Highland Park, it's just beyond a joke. Even for enthusiasts, even for fans of the distillery, to try and keep up with what they're putting out is just incredibly difficult. This is the standard core range 18-year-old in the new packaging, and very fancy it is too, with its new locking cork and things like that. But honestly, I would prefer that they put much less effort into the packaging and more effort into the quality of the product. Anybody that knows this whisky will know how much it's changed over the years, and not always in a positive direction. I have to say that I enjoyed this better than I enjoyed my last 18-year-old from Highland Park, but still it's not worth the money in my experience. This now is way over £100 and it's creeping up in price each year, and I say that there's so much more out there that's much more enjoyable and better presented for the money. This is 43% as well, which makes it a wee bit light. I'm not in a hurry to replace this, and when I smash this bottle, that'll be the first time that I'm without Highland Park 18 in my collection for about a decade. And I don't think I'm going to miss it. 7.5 out of 10. Deanston. This is the 23-year-old Oloroso expression. I'm a huge fan of Deanston, everybody knows. But this one was just okay for me. It was good at the start, it kind of flattened out towards the middle, and the last few drams from it I was enjoying, but it wasn't. The thing about Deanston is that all the engagement for me is in much younger expressions, 12-year-old, 15-year-old, organic. The 18-year-old is coming very, very good as well. And I think that's wholly down to the changes that Deanston put in place in the early 2000s, the changes that they made to cask management, to fermentation and distillation, when they were knowing that they were making something that they were going to sell as a single malt and not just a product for contract fillings and things to be made for other people in blends. When they decided to change everything for presentation as a single malt at 46.3% as their minimum presentation, fantastic. As soon as that happened, we saw the difference in quality. Everybody's talking about Deanston now, and that's why I believe. Nobody at Deanston has confirmed this for me, it's just my opinion, of course, but I think that's the reason that young Deanston is fabulous. If you start getting towards 20-year-olds and beyond, you need to try before you buy first. Fortunately, this wasn't too expensive. This was sub £150, so for a 23-year-old Oloroso mature product, it was still very, very good. I don't regret having this, but I'm not in a hurry to replace it. I would buy younger Deanston with all the fantastic experimentation that they're doing with different casks right now. Really engaging stuff. This, not so much. Still, it's an 8 out of 10. Finally, I get around to sharing an Ardbeg 10 in a recycled review. People have been asking me about this for ages and ages. I get through a lot of Ardbeg 10 and I'm surprised it's never been in a recycled review before. But I think what happens with this is I often gift it when there's maybe half a bottle or less left. This is a fantastic example of Islay whiskey. It's a fantastic example of Ardbeg. And if I was going to go out and have an Ardbeg in my collection, it would be the Ardbeg 10-year-old. I enjoy the Corryvreckan, the Ugadal, I enjoy all Ardbegs generally. It's not bad stuff, but the prices are getting crazy sometimes. And this 10-year-old is out there at 46%, unchill filtered written on the label with an age statement on there, for £50 or less. And it's great stuff. And sipping it in contrast with other whiskies shows you just how good an Ardbeg it is. I will replace this Ardbeg 10. I do enjoy it a lot, and it's an 8.5 out of 10. Let's use this opportunity to have a wee whinge. This is Jura. This is their 18-year-old expression at 44%. 44% is bizarre, isn't it? It's neither meat nor fish, I just don't understand. This wasn't a particularly bad Jura, but for an 18-year-old whiskey from that location, it was a bit of a letdown. It could have been better. There's some red wine cask finishing going on in here. It says matured in American white oak, ex-bourbon barrels, and enriched by the finest red wine casks. There was definitely a heavy, winey element on here, and to me, it was a wee bit detrimental. What was wrong with the bourbon casks at 18 years old? This is really and where a sweet spot should be for a Jura. Where that distillery exists, the independent bottles I've tried from that distillery suggests that their official core range should be better than it is. And now the core range is just beyond comprehension. I don't understand what all these different names and additions are. And where I've always wanted to engage and find a really good Jura, I find myself just constantly stepping back and stepping back. But I want to use this to have a bit of a whinge in general at the owners, White and Mackay. Consider the distilleries that they have: Jura, Dalmore, Tamnavulin and Fettercairn. And then think about how many of those distilleries that you love, and then consider how they should be loved. I don't think it's the distilleries, I don't think it's the whiskey that they're making necessarily, but I certainly think it's how it's presented and how it's put out there, often very cynically in the marketplace. It's either a very cheap supermarket brand, or it's a polished, overhyped and overpackaged brand that doesn't always make a lot of sense. And it's never more obvious than in the sampling and the enjoyment, or in the attempted enjoyment of the whiskey. Sample it in contrast with other things, and then you just realise how bizarre these whiskies can be sometimes. It's like the corners have been knocked off too much sometimes, or it's just a bizarre influence coming in from an odd cask. None of it is honest, none of it is straight, none of it is fair. Fair to the distilleries is what I'm talking about. Jura should be better. And this, even at its reasonable price of sub £70, even at 18 years old, even at 44%, is still not good enough. 6.5 out of 10. And while I'm having a whinge about distilleries that could be doing it better, let's talk a wee bit about Auchentoshan. A local distillery to me, not far. I have enjoyed some decent expressions from Auchentoshan over the years. I remember having a really nice time with a 21-year-old about 10 years ago. But it's tough to find decent stuff now. I'm not saying it's undrinkable, I'm not even saying it's odd. I just think it's a wee bit too sweet and easy and accessible. This is meant for a very specific market. Oftentimes it's meant for cocktails and bartenders and things like that. The clue is in the name of one of their expressions, the bartender's malt. I understand that, and understand that there's a place for this. This is a fantastically powerful weapon, this American oak expression that I have here at 40%, for people when they're in my house that don't really get whiskey yet. This is very sweet, very easy to drink and very accessible whiskey. And it's very good at that, and it's a very good price point as well. It's very good value. But what I would say is that once you start your whiskey journey and you move along, stuff like this just becomes so kind of bland. And even to start a flight, it tends to be something that you might end up avoiding in time. Just my opinion, of course, but Auchentoshan American Oak is only worth 6.5 points to me. Back onto the good stuff. And when we talk about value, I shared this in a vPub quite recently. I talked about this being one of the best, if not the best, value in whiskey right now. This is from Anok, which is Knockdo Distillery. 24 years old, 46%. On the label it says non-chill filtered, and it even tells us that it's natural colour. And it's just over £100 for 24-year-old whiskey. I mean, just wonderful, wonderful stuff. When I first opened this, it didn't quite reveal itself. It was a wee bit tight on the first couple of drams out the bottle. Throughout the bottle, it started to get better and better and better. And the last couple of drams in it, I decided I had to have another bottle, especially at that price. And I've shared it with everybody on the lives, and I'm sharing it with you here now to say that if you don't have this and you're looking to treat yourself to a more expensive, better matured whiskey, and if you're interested in complex and things that are a wee bit different, because this is certainly unique, I would recommend this fully. This is 9 out of 10 whiskey, especially at that price, and I loved this bottle. This one nearly got my whiskey of the year last year. I'm a bit of a fan of Arran generally, but there can be inconsistencies, and some of them occasionally can be a wee bit challenging to some. But the core expressions have gone through a bit of a rebranding recently, and that's always a bit of a red flag, wondering what's going on. It's costing a lot of money to do this, and has it affected the whiskey? Tried this a couple of times over the course of last year before I went out and paid the money, about £80 to get a bottle of this in the collection at home. And I got through this faster than any other bottle of whiskey last year. It was unbelievable how quickly this was enjoyed. I shared it with everybody. I wanted a lot of feedback and a lot of opinion from them as well, and everyone agreed that this is fantastic, and I would say that it's even better than the previous branding. It seems to be much more and better quality sherry in this expression. Still not expensive, and I was so blown away with it that I almost gave it Whisky of the Year, but in the end that went to a Glendronach 15 Revival. Still, this is a worthy bottle of whisky for you to have in your collection. I would give this 9 out of 10 and recommend that you try the new R18. The weight of this cork. There's a lump of granite in the cork here. Is it necessary? I'm not even sure that you can still buy this. This is Ailsa Bay. I bought this a couple of years ago, gifted a bottle of this. In fact, I think this is the gifted bottle. It was handed back to me with a few drams left in it to enjoy it together. But this was an interesting whisky when it came out, from a lowland distillery, Ailsa Bay, down in Girvan, part of Grants, the people that own Glenfiddich and Balvenie. They've got a huge complex down there in Girvan producing grain whiskies, but it's also got a malt distillery down there as well, hence Ailsa Bay. This is their peated version, and it was pretty damn nice, I have to say. £50, not too expensive, but bear in mind that it's a non-age statement. It would be nice if they were confident enough to put an age statement on there, even if it was a young one, bearing in mind that it's a young, sweet, peated whisky. Interestingly enough, they have the ppms printed on here, 021 for ppm, which I think is phenols parts per million, but they also have SPPM here as well, and I guess that would be sweetness parts per million. Odd. Now this has been out there for 2 or 3 years and I haven't seen many other distilleries adopting the same, but it's kind of interesting. I would say that at 48.9% this was a decent whisky and we did enjoy it, and I was certainly very confident for the person who I bought this for and I gifted it to that they would enjoy it as well, and they very much did. I would give this an 8.5 out of 10, but urge Grants, with the other presentation that they're putting in here, let's not give us a granite top. Give us an age statement instead. Even if it's 5 or 6 or 7 years old, be confident enough to teach people that young, sweet, peated whisky is enjoyable. Tell us what's in the bottle. 8.5 out of 10, not bad. Vega from North Star, a Glasgow independent bottler, and their Vega branding has become quite a cult brand, and what this is blended malt. So that is, there's no grain whisky in here, so it's not a Scotch blend, but it's blended malt, so it's the product of multiple distilleries, but malt distilleries. They've had a few age statements out there. They've had a 40 and a 41, a 23-year-old, 28-year-old, some others. This is a 33-year-old. And I have to say, for 33-year-old sherry cask whisky, all Vega celebrates that sherry cask, and the blended malts are all ex-sherry. For £110 or £115 that I paid for this is fantastic value. There's nothing to talk about. I have to say, with this batch release type format though, that the quality is up and down a wee bit. It's never ever bad. But for me, the best quality ones was probably the first couple that I tried, which was a 23-year-old way back in the day and a 40-year-old. Both of them. Neither of them are going to be available now, of course, but they were really, really fantastic stuff. Still, if you love sherried whiskies, forget the fact that this is a blended malt. If you can find this, just go right ahead and buy it. It's going to be fantastic stuff, and it's going to be fantastic value as well. This 33-year-old gets an 8 out of 10, but there are other Vegas out there that could easily score 8.5 or even 9 out of 10. Decent stuff. Finally, before it gets dark. This is Craigellachie. This is a 23-year-old expression. I've paid a fair bit of money for this. I paid £210, £215 for this bottle. Quite a lot of money, and I think when I bought this, it's the most money I'd ever spent on a bottle of whiskey for myself. First couple of drams, I wasn't sure, but then very, very quickly it became amazing. One of the most amazing things about this is that really old whiskey flavour that it has to, a kind of dunnage style flavour profile to it that really makes it quite engaging, and you know as you sip it that you're sipping something quite special. Now I know that it has over the years changed a little bit. Some of it has more of that, some of it have less than that, as I guess it's entirely related to how much older stock perhaps makes it into these bottlings. But what I will say is that in the UK This is a don't bother. This is approaching £400 now. It's crazy. It's good whiskey, it's very good whiskey, but it's not £380, £400 whiskey. The reason that it's in recycled reviews now is that a lot of you guys are out there in the States and you guys can pick it up for $200, much closer to the price I originally paid for this a couple of years ago. At that price, it's very much worth it. £380 in the UK, forget about it. If we were judging this when price not being part of the equation, this is 9 out of 10 whiskey. But of course I'd struggle to give it that score based on the prices it's commanding in the UK now. And at that price, there's no way this is going back in the cabinet again. Still, I enjoyed my time with Craigellachie 23, and it is a special whiskey. A wee bonus here, a wee 16th bottle. This is the bottle that I shared on the beach with Scotch Test Dummies last year while they were in Islay. Fantastic stuff. This is their peated Bunnahabhain Moynia PX. I've raved and raved about Moynia Oloroso, one of my favourite whiskies. I mean, just a fantastic, fantastic whiskey to enjoy. Not a session whiskey, it's one of those whiskies you would only have one and then move on. This is very much the same, but for a different reason. This is lighter and sweeter and fruitier even, I would say, and that PX sweetness does shine through on this. Where the Moynia Oloroso would be a 9, 9.5 out of 10, this is kind of a more 8 to 8.5 out of 10. I think there are other things from Bunnahabhain that's a wee bit better than this. Still, decent stuff, and really pretty much anything from the recent Bunnahabhain expressions is worth exploring. The thing about this one is though, you would have to go to the distillery to buy this. This is a distillery hand-filled, buy at the distillery only. But really, it's the best thing to do. It's the most fun, and I would recommend to anybody that they get out there and do it if they can. Because it turns an 8 out of 10 whiskey into a 10 out of 10 whiskey every single time. Fantastic. Thanks for sticking with me for another recycled review. Aye, and of course there is a giveaway for those of you who have stuck around till the end. I've saved some heels from some of these bottles and I'll put them in a package and I'll send them out to somebody that I draw on an upcoming vPub live stream in the near future. All you have to do to be in a chance with winning these is to be of legal drinking age for drinking alcohol and wherever you live, and of course be in a country that I can legally ship alcohol to you. If you are, make a comment in the video below and add the phrase heels please, and I'll enter you into a draw and I'll draw you on an upcoming vPub live stream. Good luck. Yes, they like to keep it. Some visitors coming, you're kidding. No, go away. But as you would imagine with this batch release type form, somebody else is doing the recycling, did you hear that?